All right, good morning, folks. Once again, we are back taking a look at the tropics. Today is Sunday, June 26, 2022. This is your daily tropical update. Tropical updates have not been as daily as they should be on the page, but life is like that sometimes. But we have some time this morning, so why not take a look at the Atlantic Basin here on your Sunday, where we do have some activity. We have a little bit of an uptick over the last week or so. It's been pretty quiet since Alex got up and out of the picture, but we have two areas to watch on the day today. So we're going to be talking about both of them. First off is a kind of a little surface trough here in the Gulf of Mexico. We talked a little bit about this last week, a system that was going to drift into the Gulf and then kind of wander off to the west. And this has some chance to develop over the next couple of days as it moves towards Texas slowly, and it's over very warm water. So we'll talk about that one first. We also have Invest 94L, a tropical wave located in the main development region of the Atlantic Basin. This is between the Caribbean Sea and the coast of Africa. This is an area we typically watch more in August and September for development, but it appears some early season waves are finding a little bit of life signs. We got Invest 94L, and then some more activity trying to come in behind 94L. So definitely something to watch over the next couple of days. These systems are currently named or anything, and neither are an immediate dire threat, but both are worth talking about. So we're going to jump into it here this morning. So let's go ahead and start with our little system in the Gulf of Mexico. Morning satellite imagery shows a bunch of scattered thunderstorms here off the coast of Alabama, Mississippi, even the Florida Panhandle this morning. There's early signs that we have something trying to organize, but it is definitely in the very fledgling stages of such. You have some some easterly winds here kind of curving like this. This is kind of what your surface trough looks like, but there is no backside winds right now. There's just nothing yet on the backside of the storm, so it's definitely not really, it doesn't really have a low pressure center yet, but these scattered thunderstorms over time will continue to the fire and fire, and then they'll start to create pressure falls, and then when that becomes more and more sustained, that's when you can kind of see a little vortex start to spin up, and then that's how you get tropical cyclones. There's a couple of indicators this may take a little while. Number one, these things are hard to see, but you're going to see little like lines of clouds like this one right here. If you watch that last frame come out, it kind of blows out this way. These are called outflow boundaries, and these are going to happen when we have that drier air causing these thunderstorms to collapse. So it's evident that the system is fighting a little bit of dry air this morning, and these thunderstorms are kind of popping up and collapsing. So until they do that enough to begin to moisten up the environment around them, this isn't going to develop right away. National Hurricane Center has a 20% chance this to develop in the next 5 days. They expect development to be slow to occur, and that's for some of the reasons we were just talking about. But this is all going to drift off to the west, and it'll move towards Texas. We back our model up here this morning. Again, you can see on the GFS, you see this nice trough axis here this morning with your winds coming up like this, going down, but there's no rotation underneath it, so it's just a trough. It's not actually an organized low pressure system yet. But this does drift along the coast of Louisiana, and then drifts more towards Texas, and then you can see by Tuesday and Wednesday, we begin to see an actual vortex form as the system does develop a little bit further, and then it'll move into Texas sometime on Wednesday is how it appears right now. So there's one or two things to get about these systems. Number one, the Gulf of Mexico is notorious these systems developing kind of quickly this time of year. You're talking about very warm water. At University of Miami, sea surface temperature map showing widespread sea surface temperatures right now above 30 degrees Celsius, is the mid to upper 80s for water. That is jet fuel for any system that gets in there and actually has some chance to develop. And this is definitely going to be plenty of fuel for the storm as it tries to get itself going. And these systems also tend to bring a whole lot of rain with them. Early calls from the Weather Prediction Center of the next 7 days does show heavy rainfall for portions of the central and western Gulf Coast, stretching from parts of the Florida Panhandle through Alabama, Mississippi, a lot of Louisiana, including New Orleans, and even into eastern Texas, including Houston. You can see rainfall totals already 3 to 5 inches potentially, and that could go up as this thing tries to organize a bit further. So it looks like early on, primarily, we'll be looking at a rainfall threat for the Gulf Coast. But if this does get going, we could be looking at potential for a tropical storm as well. Again, right now, the Hurricane Center not very high on it, but you kind of always have to lean a little high with the Gulf and these sorts of deals. You don't want to underestimate how fast they can spin up. So something we'll be watching. Again, I don't think this is going to be like a hurricane or anything big or amazing, but it could definitely surprise a lot of people, bring a lot of heavy rain. And sometimes things that really maybe don't get named but still produce a lot of heavy rainfall are the worst, because no one gets time off or no one can really prepare, and then you kind of get caught in the trap there. So hopefully that won't happen, but it is something to watch over the next few days as well. It'll have generally light divergence, warm water, and I feel like this thing has a shot as long as these storms can kind of cluster up and get going. So keep in mind on that for the central and western Gulf Coast. Looks like, pretty much tomorrow through about Wednesday would be the main threat window for that. All right, let's go ahead and switch gears. Invest 94L. Let's move way out here to the central Atlantic basin. We have a tropical wave that thinks it's the middle of September and not June, but that is like it is. So Invest 94L, looking at this a little bit closer here this morning, shows a nice little wave, actually getting close to becoming a tropical depression. We have what looks like at least a coherent low level or mid to low level sort of vortex trying to form this morning. You have most of your heavier thunderstorms are off to the west of the low center, but if you kind of pay attention to the satellite, somewhere right here, you can see that backside flow, that kind of southwest flow coming up. It definitely is something that looks like it has somewhat of a low level center trying to form. Now, again, the thunderstorms are all kind of displaced off downstream of the shear, which is going to be out of the east. You have trade winds pushing the system off to the east at about 20 miles an hour. They're pretty robust trade winds. So when the system is being pushed to the east like this, it's harder for it to get some backside flow, but it is trying to do that. And as long as these thunderstorms can begin to start wrapping around that low level center and kind of push up shear, which is basically the storms building back into the prevailing wind direction. So your prevailing winds go this way, but then your thunderstorms slowly try to build up around the low pressure center the other way. And as it does that, that will be the signal that, hey, this is actually an organized tropical cyclone of some kind. And the Hurricane Center does have a good chance of that. They have a 70% chance for this to develop this morning. Already telling the interest in the Windward Islands. They should be monitoring the progress of the storm, and then it'll eventually be moving into the Caribbean Sea. Now, there's one or two things to note about a wave like this. Number one, it is very early in the year, and climatology exists for a reason. What that means is waves that move through this area of the basin in June historically have very bad luck. Only a couple of storms on record have ever formed out in this region in the month of June. And July still is not very common. I mean, I know we're at the end of June, so you got to take that into account as well. But this is not a very favorable place to be if you're a tropical wave this time of year. However, it looks like it's got just the right position right now. You've got this overall drier flow to the north. It's staying just south of that, but it's staying just north where it probably won't careen into South America. And it's about as low as a wave can get without just not being able to rotate at all, because they can't rotate at the equator because the Coriolis force and all that of the Earth. So this is about as low as you can be, and it's definitely found itself in a nice little groove, a nice little rail, if you will, and it is trying to get itself together. I would anticipate we're going to have a tropical depression out of this in the next day or so, and then it could be a tropical storm by the time it approaches the Windward Islands sometime on Wednesday. So this is the comparison of the GFS and European ensembles. Our models here thinking that this begins to develop right around the Windward Islands early on or late on Tuesday, and then on Wednesday, most of the models do show again that this is probably going to try to spin up after the islands, but there are some members that think it'll spin up before. So the tropical storm naming looks like it's going to be somewhere in here. It's going to be right around that time. And the GFS model kind of showing us the same thing. This is too far back. But again, so more members of the GFS developed this before the islands, but by the islands, a lot of them have developed. Again, this is really low. This is about as low. You can't go any further south or you're going to be on land. So this is a kind of a really low running system, and it's going to definitely bring some impacts to the Windward Islands. It may just be rain, but tropical storm watches and warnings very possible for the southern parts of these islands on Tuesday and Wednesday. The future of the system looks kind of like this. Most of the ensemble members continue to carry this thing south through the Caribbean at a very low latitude and brings it into Central America. The sort of fly in the ointment for this one is going to be the intensity. If this does kind of surpass expectations, if this intensifies beyond what we think, which is kind of a weaker tropical storm, then it could try to pull a bit further north, which down the road could spell an issue for, say, the Gulf, like Western Gulf. I don't think the East Coast get anything from this thing, and you see most of the members that keep it weak are south and into Central America, but there's a few, like on the European here, that see it a little stronger, and those are going to tend to pull a little more north. You're going to have a blocking high pressure keeping this pretty far south for a while, but if that high is maybe a little bit weaker and this storm's a little bit stronger and it wants to pull a little more north, you know, it could get some more influence from that. Again, those strong trade winds want to just blast us right into Central America, but if it's a stronger storm that feels more upper level flow, it may try to creep a bit further north, go into the Yucatan, and then who knows what the weather looks like at this point, which would be like 7 days from now, 5, 7 days from now in the Gulf of Mexico at that time. So definitely going to be something to watch for the Western Gulf, just to keep an eye on. But I don't think this one's going to be a big impact for the Eastern U.S., and I'm not even completely convinced it's going to survive all through the Caribbean. Again, we get these hype storms every year. It's the first one. Everyone's excited. They freak out about it. And then they go, oh, oops, that's right, it's June, and they fall apart. So I'm not super worried about this. But again, if it does overachieve in more than one way, sometime down the road, it may still be worth watching. So just keep an eye on that. But for now, 94L does not look like a major threat, but it's likely going to be our next named storm in the Atlantic Basin. So that's at least that, which would be a little ahead of schedule, but overall not bad. It's definitely not something that we've seen the last couple of years. We'd already be on like the letter E by now, so thankfully we're in a more normal pattern for that. But that's kind of what I got for you guys this morning. We are going to have another wave behind 94L. We got a little more activity back behind it. Sometimes these like waves can be sacrificial. This one can be sacrificial, and then the second one can find a better environment. So we'll see if that second one develops at all, and if it wants to be any further north, something we'll have to watch. But I, for now, would not be worried about things in the MDR in June until there was a reason to worry. And otherwise, your tropics are quiet and behaving as such. Eastern Pacific is going to have another storm this week as Cindy or whoever the other one was weakens. You'll have another one pop up, and the Western Pacific dead silent through May and June, which is almost unheard of in historical record, but it looks like it's going to happen this month. So that's what I got for you guys this morning on your tropical update. As always, thanks for watching, and have a good one.